Let me share with you 3 of my best all-time driver videos. You know, driving doesn't have to be that complicated, especially when you get some of the secrets that I'm going to share with you here. Let's go and get started. Hey guys, I'm really excited with you to share one of my best videos to help you drive it farther. And the cool thing about this is you don't have to make a lot of changes to your swing. We're talking about how to just get the most out of what you already have. Probably the best analogy that I can come up with to a really good hit drive would be a topspin forehand. So if you play tennis, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Even if you don't, I'll kind of walk you through it here at first. So if I'm going to hit a topspin forehand, what's happening here is as I'm coming to contact, my racket is moving up. So I'm really on a vertical upward swing. That helps to bring the ball slightly up in the air. It has a little bit to do with that. But it helps to get the top spin on there because my racket face is actually pointing down a little bit. So if I was to swing up and my racket face was up, well, that ball is just going to launch straight up in the air, really high, but it's not going to have any topspin on it. If I was to swing up and my face is now down, that's going to create that topspin and get this ball kind of going end over end and really come down into the court. Well, in the golf swing, we want to feel like we're doing that same thing. It's not going to have the topspin, but we're trying to take backspin off the drive. We're getting it to launch really high, but then to have a knuckleball to bore through the wind and get the most distance possible. So let me go ahead and walk you through exactly how we can take that same analogy there with our tennis racket and apply that to the golf swing. So piece number 1 is I have to have the path or the direction of my golf club moving up. That is true. In golf, the biggest hitters, the guys that are getting the most out of their club head speed, are hitting up on the ball probably 4 or 5 degrees, meaning that as I'm coming into contact, my club head is moving upward as it's coming through the ball. So a good easy way to do this is just put the ball a little bit forward in your stance. If I put this ball kind of in front of my left toe, I'm going to exaggerate here for a second. You can imagine the bottom of my swing arc is going to be, or if I had a hula hoop here, the bottom where that club head reaches its low point is going to be behind the golf ball, and then it's going to head back up the other side of the hula hoop, and I'm going to hit on the upswing. So the farther up I place the ball, the more on the vertical or the more up I'm going to hit it, the higher the potential launch, and the lower the potential spin if I can de-loft this golf club. So that's piece number 1. Piece number 2 is I'm going to de-loft this club. So number 2 is I'm going to rotate on through. I have to get my hips coming around to be able to de-loft the golf club. If my hips slow down and they kind of stop too early, the only way to get that club to keep on moving with some speed is to push it with my hands, and you'll see how that adds some loft to the face. My face loft gets higher. If I can go ahead and continue to rotate my body through, now I can take some loft off. You'll notice how my left wrist is slightly bowed. My hips are moving on around. I'm still coming on that upward swing, but now I'm taking the loft off the face. Now what you'll visualize or what you'll feel when you're doing this is you'll imagine that you're swinging up, but you're taking all this loft off. So you're doing this. That's the feeling you're going to get. So look at the face loft. Very, very low. This is way exaggerated. This isn't really happening, but that's what you're going to feel. And then from there, I'm hitting this top spin just like the forehand. It's going to launch high, and then it's going to fall down and knuckle through the wind. So let's take out the flight scope here. And what I want to see is I want to see a positive angle of attack. PGA Tour average is about -1, so they're coming in pretty level. That's a consistent one. If I want to hit it like the really big hitters like Justin Thomas, Bubba Watson, those guys are getting a ton, I want to see that at least +3 or maybe even a little bit more. Now the loft on the club face, I don't want to get that high. I want to keep it under 15 degrees if I do this correctly. So let's make some swings here, and we're going to try to hit those 2 numbers. +3 on the angle of attack and 15 degrees loft on the club head at impact. Let's see if I can give it a whirl and make that happen. All right, so that one was absolutely perfect. I hit up on it a little bit extra. I was actually 4.7 on the up. My club is moving up through the ball 4.7 degrees, and I de-lofted the face enough where it only had 10 degrees loft on there. Now, one of the questions you may be asking is, how do we have 10 degrees loft on the face? Shouldn't it be the same amount that's on your driver? Well, my driver's an 8.5, which means at the center of the face, it's supposed to be 8.5 degrees. Because the club face is rounded, at the top, it's probably closer to 13 or 14 degrees. And now as I'm swinging up, if I don't have that shaft lean forward, that's going to turn that into 18 or 19 degrees. So I've got to get this club shaft lean forward to take that loft off of there and to get that top spin type ball. So even though I hit that one off the heel, I actually didn't make the best contact with that. Angle of attack, +4.7. The loft, I took some loft off. Now I swung 117 about average and hit that ball about 300 yards, which for a miss hit, that is great distance. That's really, really good. So that's the first piece. If we got to get that top spin forehand to get that knuckler in a lot of distance. All right, so the second piece is I want to make sure that I'm contacting the ball in the right spot. Now if I hit a little bit toward the top of the club, so if I hit toward the center of the club, that would be right in the sweet spot. If you're looking from here, that would be right in the middle of the club face. That's okay, that's going to be a good solid shot. If I hit more toward the top of this club though, what's going to happen is that's going to actually twist my club head backwards a little bit at impact. And because my ball is stuck to this face, it's actually going to roll forwards. That's going to give it less backspin. Again, that high knuckleball. So it's got more loft on the top of the face, that's going to launch it higher, but it's also twisting and taking some spin off of this golf ball to make it get less spin. Now it's not actually putting top spin on it again, but it's actually just less backspin. That's what we're going for. So if we hit a little higher on the face, that's going to be perfect. Second thing is a little bit off the toe. So think about a 1/4 inch above the sweet spot, a 1/4 inch off the toe is going to be absolutely perfect. The reason for that is this club face is releasing as I'm coming through contact. That toe is always turning over. It's always moving a little bit faster than the sweet spot is moving. The toe is turning down. Compared to the heel, it's moving 12 to 14 miles an hour faster. So if I just go a little bit off the toe, I get a boost of 1 or 2 miles per hour. I'm gonna get a little bit extra distance, and again, that high knuckler. All right, now the third piece is getting the correct driver for you. So if I'm able to get that positive angle of attack, if I put that ball up in my stance, if I'm able to de-loft this club, if I learn those skills, now all of a sudden I can use a driver that's much lower loft, and I'm gonna get a little bit more power into it. So if I have a lower lofted driver, and I can turn that down, now this club face is meeting very flush with the golf ball. If I don't have that forward shaft lean, let's imagine that I struggle flipping the golf club and I'm pushing back here, well then I'm really gonna have a tough time to be able to get the correct angles there. What's gonna happen is I'm hitting too far down into the ball, and I'm oftentimes gonna need more loft to get the club up in the air, to get the ball up in the air. So if I have a -5 angle of attack, I'm hitting down on it. If I de-lofted that club, it would just barely get off the ground. So I can't do that. What ends up happening is I have to get a higher lofted driver, which is going to get tons of backspin and get the ball launching higher and not as good. Or I'm going to have to flip the club to release it. And again, it's going to add backspin because I'm hitting down and my loft is up, and it's kind of like creating the opposite direction with the tennis racket. So if I had this slice forehand, I'm swinging down, my face is up, and now I'm creating backspin and this ball's spinning this way and wanting to float. That's really going to kill your distance. So if I learn those first two skills of swinging up and de-lofting the club, now I can cheat even a little farther. I can get a lower lofted club and it's still going to launch high, it's still going to knuckle, and I'm going to be absolutely smoking the ball out there. So let's go ahead and hit one more. I'll try to see if I can get it well over the 300 mark and give it a good rip. All right, so that one I had a great angle of attack, hit up on it 2.8 degrees, so I had that nice vertical angle of attack. I had the club face de-lofted, only had 11.9 degrees of loft on the club head, and it had around 2,400 RPMs of spin. That equaled 326 yards after the roll, so really happy with that one. Go ahead and take those keys, you're gonna be absolutely ripping the ball. All right, let's cut right to the chase. How do we hit the driver with speed and power and still be accurate? Piece number one. We need a little bit of a wider stance. A lot of times you'll hear players talking about, or coaches or whoever, talking about narrowing up that stance. That way it's easier to rotate coming back and through. Now that's only the case if your feet stay flat on the ground. So if my feet are close together, they stay flat on the ground. Now it is easier to rotate back and through if I'm here versus if they stay flat on the ground here. Problem is in the golf swing, our feet don't stay flat on the ground. As we come through, that right heel comes up, that allows our heels to rotate. And you can see I could even take this big wide stance, this big base, and I could really rotate my hips a ton by doing that in the golf swing. So let's put this to the test. If a wider swing is better for power, we should be able to make a swing and see the power go up. First, let's take a narrow swing here. So I'm gonna exaggerate, really exaggerate for this test. And I'm just gonna have a really narrow stance. I'm gonna try to hit this ball as hard as I can. And it's very tough. I feel like I'm really fighting my feet to grab some friction and some power from the ground. I still generated a pretty decent amount of swing speed. Tough to control, 107 miles an hour, 235 carry, 256 total. Now let's go ahead and hit one with a wider stance. So obviously we can see that that's not going to be very tough to beat those numbers. given what I usually swing, but let's really exaggerate it here. Again, go to the extreme so we can feel this. Now I can really feel like I grab into the ground and rotate my hips. Again, that right foot has to come off the ground to allow that to happen, but that happens in every great golf swing. So here, let's try to really swing one hard. There we go, much better. A little thin on the face. We can see there that's much more swing speed, much more distance. Even though that wouldn't normally be the way I would swing the golf club, jumped up to 117 and 275 total. Not bad for a miss hit there. So that's piece number one. Grab a golf club and do this for me. Start out with a very narrow stance and swing as hard as you can. You're gonna find it incredibly difficult. Go wider and wider and wider until you feel really powerful. And then keep on going until you feel like you're so wide, now it is a little bit tougher to move through the shot. And then narrow that down again. So test this out to find your most powerful stance width. It's easy for somebody to say, okay, we need to be shoulder width, but if I make it a little wider than shoulder width and I pick up 10 or 15 yards, you better believe I'm gonna swing like this. I'm gonna find the way that works best for me, given my own body type and my own stature. So play around with stance widths and you'll start to find a sweet spot there where you feel like you get tons of power and you can really crank that driver. Now once we have this powerful base, we're ready to move into the actual drill here, which is going to help us to leverage the ground and really get the power from the body. Okay, so this drill is really going to help me to rotate the big segments of my body, my legs, my hips, my shoulders, and generate a lot of power from that. All I'm going to do is take the grip with my left hand only. I'm going to bring it over here, add my right hand on it, and I'm going to split this grip apart by about shoulder width or so. A little bit wider and narrow doesn't really make much difference. The right hand's going to go on there underhand. Now from here, I'm going to work on loading up my body. So I'm going to really feel like I'm loading up as far back as I can go. Again, everybody's going to be a little bit different based on your flexibility. Feel like you loosen up that left heel a little bit to get those hips to rotate. Really load up into the backswing. So that's going to help to stretch you out and feel like you're really getting wound up, just like you see with the top pros. If you're a little bit tighter and you can only go to here, that's completely fine. Just go as far as you can to get the most power that you have given your own individual range of motion. Now from there, as I work on this downswing, I want to feel like I'm coming down on plane. So I don't want to come down over the top like this and slice across the ball. I don't want to come back way inside like this. Let's get really wound up and then come down on plane, and through impact, what I want you to do is feel like a hockey shot. I don't play hockey, but so I apologize for people that do play hockey if I'm describing this wrong. But feel like this is a hockey shot. And I want you to take that right foot and drive through there and feel like you're gonna press through with the right side of your body. So I'm taking the right side of my body and I'm really getting some power into that swing this way. So as I come on through, I'm really feel like I'm driving the right side of my body, my hip, my shoulder, my arms are coming through with some speed, and that's going to allow me to get the speed into this club. That's going to make sure that I don't decelerate and I really keep everything working through the golf shot. Now the wrong way to do this, and where I see players lose a lot of speed, is they'll keep their body still. They'll start down and go all hands and arms and flip because my body's not moving. If I can rotate my body on through, now I can keep that momentum moving through the golf ball. So again, easy to say, let's just put it to the test, find out for ourselves. On this one, I'm gonna feel like I keep my lower body very still, not very engaged, the opposite of what we just did in that drill. So I'm not gonna not really load up in the backswing, and I'm not gonna turn on through in the downswing. So watch my legs on this swing. Again, I got a lot of whip from my hands and arms. Not gonna be very accurate with that one. That was not gonna be the best shot. Went over into the left rough barely. And my swing speed was 103.9, 258 total distance. So I hit it pretty well considering my low swing speed, but I can do a lot better than that, and you can too. I'm gonna go ahead and do this drill again 4 or 5 times, get the feeling there, really driving through the shot. Let's get that same sensation in the drive. Let's see if we can pick up a little bit of distance. There we go, much better. Right down the left side of the fairway. Let's see what my club head speed and my distance went up to. So 103 on the one before. I'm all the way up to 115.4, 291.9 total distance. So really focus on getting wound up with that split grip. That really helps you do that. And then from there, use those legs, use that lower body to rotate on through to build your swing speed. Hey, it's absolutely great to have you here today. This video is going to be a little bit different, where I'm going to take some questions that I've been asked recently, and we're going to dive into those. I've got a lot of great tips for you, and we're going to start out with one of my favorite ones, which is whether or not you should swing hard or you should swing nice and easy and fluid in your golf swing. What's going to be better for you to perform the best? I'm going to talk about a little bit of a controversial answer to that and some data to really back that up. So the question is, GST 19742 asks, I wish instructors, including Clay Ballard, would stop emphasizing distance above solid fundamentals and a smooth swing. Mentally, it paints a picture that the harder you swing, the better. That is incorrect. Most people can't even make solid ball contact on a consistent basis. Also, spend more time on course management tips, especially awkward lies, the role that elevation changes between current position and target, as well as wind speed and direction affect club selection and real distance needed. So I think that is an absolutely great question. It's really broken down into a couple pieces there. Number one would be, if I swing smoother, would I actually be more consistent? And if I swing harder, will I be less consistent? So I actually have a pretty good amount of data collected on this. So I have one of my main programs is what's called the 20-minute distance fix. And it's a 3-week course where we focus on getting the swing speed as high as you can get it and picking up as much distance as you can get. Now in that course, one of the first drills that I have people do is swing as hard as they can. And they have devices, so we took a sample size, a pilot group of actually 86 players, had them all measure their swing. We've tracked all the data. And what we found is, from your base swing speed to your highest swing speed to swinging hard, is a little over 3 miles an hour gain, about 3.2, 3.3 miles per hour gain. So if I swing 100 miles an hour on my normal swing, if I go and just swing as hard as I can, then I'm gonna swing 103, a little over 103. Well, in the 20-minute distance fix class, which is 2 range sessions per week, they last 20 minutes each, and then 1 20-minute session from home. At the end of those 3 weeks, we found 13.4 miles per hour average gain on the fastest swings. So from 100 all the way up to 113. Now I do recommend swinging hard in there, so that is a big piece of it, but it's not just swinging hard, it's how you do that to swing hard. So the idea of swinging hard is not that bad. If you swing hard and do it the right way, you can pick up 12, 13, 14 miles an hour of swing speed, and that's just the average. We had some guys that picked up 28 miles an hour on their fastest swings. So if you can pick up swing speed like that, is it a good idea? Am I just going to be wow? That's kind of the second part to that question. Well, again, that 86-person sample set, we asked them a lot of questions as they went through this, and those that completed the drills, the 86 people that completed the drills in the 20-minute distance fix, a little over 80% of them said that they were hitting it as straight or straighter than they did before the course. So not only did they pick up, 13 miles an hour is about 2.6 yards for every mile an hour. So we're looking at about 34.5 yards longer, but then over 80% of them said, I'm hitting it just as straight or straighter. So the idea that I need to swing slow and smooth and stay in rhythm is mostly false from what I found. If you're inconsistent, you're not hitting a lot of fairways, you're not really hitting it as consistent as you want on the face, I found if you swing hard, you're still going to be fairly inconsistent. If you swing easy, you're still going to be fairly inconsistent. The way to build consistency is to develop the fundamentals and develop the skills of consistency. So if you're fairly inconsistent right now, no matter how easy you swing, you're still going to be fairly inconsistent. And if you want to test that out, it's really easy to do. Just go out, play 18 holes, swing nice and easy off the tee, and then see how your score goes. Most of the time, people are going to find that they shoot about the same as they normally would. Now, if you're really inconsistent and you're feeling like when you swing harder or you work through these distance drills that maybe you can't make ball first contact, maybe you are struggling a little bit there, that's where the Top Speed Golf system is going to come in. So that's a little bit different program that focuses more on the fundamentals. So one of the main fundamentals I go over in the Top Speed Golf system is what I call the stable fluid spine. And with that, what I'm trying to do here, and what all great players do, all great pros do, I've analyzed hundreds of PGA Tour players, and they're all doing this very consistently, is that as I come through contact, I need my body tilted away from the target. So if I'm hitting this way, I need my upper body tilted away. That allows me to release in front of the golf ball. That's what I call the stable fluid spine. And the second piece of that is the straight line release. If I'm going to release this club with some lag, I need that to happen in front of the golf ball or through the golf ball. So if I'm flipping, I'm gonna have a really tough time being consistent. If I'm leaning toward the target, now my upper body is going this way toward the target, I'm gonna have a really tough time being consistent. So I address those issues in the Top Speed Golf system. So in a nutshell, let me go ahead, I got a tip for you to pick up some distance here in a second, but let me break through exactly what I would recommend. I would recommend starting off with the distance right away. Work through the 3-week course, pick up 13 miles an hour of swing speed, start driving at 30 yards farther, and really just have a lot of fun with it. If you get a little bit inconsistent or a little bit less consistent, it's going to be marginal. And even from there, I don't have the data to back that up. I think you're going to probably be as consistent as you were before, if not more consistent. But you're going to be hitting it a whole heck of a lot farther. Then at that point, then work through the Top Speed Golf system so that you can really get super consistent, develop the fundamentals that are going to allow you to have play great golf the rest of your life. So let's jump in with that swing speed. I know everybody wants more swing speed. I know you'd like to start hitting it farther. Let's go over one of the #1 things here that I see that helps players to get some more swing speed. This is a little sneak peek from the 20-minute distance fix. I can't give you away everything here, but I'm gonna give away one of the best tips. I call this the boomerang. And basically what this means is as I come down, my hands are gonna be going down in the downswing. If you can imagine my hand path like a boomerang, it's going down and then back up. And this club is gonna be going down. And the key here is not only the down part of the boomerang getting club head speed, but then turning my hands back up to allow the club whip on through. So I want to focus on my butt end of the club staying down toward the ball as long as I can, really getting this to work out toward the ball. And then from there, to really get the snap of speed, I want to go ahead and release that, turn the butt end of the club back up toward my body. So let me go ahead and give one a whirl here. I'm going to swing hard on this one. I'm going to go ahead and give it a good rip, and we'll see if I can hit the fairway. If I don't, then it's not going to be a very good argument. I'm not going to look too good here. Let's try it out. There we go, hit that one well. Right down the left edge of the fairway. Not gonna hit one much better than that, so I did all right there. All right, let's jump into the next question here. And this one is from Chaya Pod. We'll put it on the screen, you'll see what I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce that. So he says, this issue's bugged me for a long time. Why can't we use a standard chipping technique in the bunker? Why not hit the ball before the sand? Why not hit the ball before the sand? Why do we have to use another technique to blast the ball out of a greenside bunker? Would a flop shot technique apply in the bunker if we just hit the ball first? And says thanks. So that is another really good one. So let's grab a 60-degree U edge. You can use a 56 or a 60 out of the bunkers. I tend to like to use a 60 just because I'm going to open it up anyways. Had a dirty club here. So the first part of the question is basically saying, why do we need to mess around with all this nonsense of having the face wide open? So traditionally, what most people would tell you when hitting out of the bunker, or what I would even tell you, is that we got to have this club face wide open. So if this is a normal square setup, normal amount of loft, I'm going to go ahead and open that face a lot. And I'm going to have this club face pointing almost straight up toward the sky as I'm setting up in the bunker. From there, I'm going to go ahead and swing really aggressively, and I'm going to hit behind the golf ball. So if you look at this golf ball on the ground, if I make this swing, my club is very first going to start to enter the sand a good 4, 5, 6 inches behind the golf ball. It's going to slide under the ball, and it's going to leave the sand 4, 5, 6 inches in front of the golf ball. So basically, I'm just taking out all this sand, and I'm letting the loft of the club explode the ball up into the air and onto the green. What I wouldn't want to do out of a bunker is to start to hit the ball first, because then I could get really inconsistent. The ball may shoot way over the green, or if I hit a little behind it, it may stay in the bunker. So he's asking, why mess around with all this? Why not just set up with it normal chip shot technique, and just come down and hit the ball first every time? And there's a few reasons for this. Number one, it's just daggone hard to do that. A lot of times when you're in a bunker, you can imagine if you're sitting on the turf, the ball's nice and high above the level of the turf here. But if I'm in a bunker, a lot of times that ball is going to be sitting down in the sand. so it's partially submerged. So there's really no way for me to get down and hit the actual golf ball first unless I'm hitting the top of the golf ball. And that's either gonna just drive it into the sand, or I'm gonna scull the ball and it's gonna fly 50, 60, 70 yards over the green. So it's basically impossible to do that a lot of times when you're in the bunker. Another thing with the bunker, even if you have that perfect lie setting up really nice, if I try to hit this ball first, it becomes extremely difficult. Again, if I hit a little high, I'm gonna blade this ball over the green. If I go a little bit low, what's gonna happen is, as my club enters the sand, little grains and bits of sand are gonna slide up in the face, and they're gonna get between my club face and the ball, and it kills the speed that this ball is coming out. So if I make a swing and I get just a little tiny bit of sand on there, there's all this fluffy sand between my club face and the ball doesn't go anywhere. It ends up staying in the bunker. Finally, if I'm doing this and I'm hitting with a square face, it's really inconsistent for distance control. So if I'm hitting that, if I hit it a little too hard, it shoots over the green. If I hit it a little too soft, again, catch a little bit of sand between the ball and the club, I'll leave it in the bunker. So I have to be very, very precise. The reason we want to do it the other way is that it creates a lot of consistency. So if I have this face wide open, let's imagine I have this face just straight up toward the sky. If I swing as hard as I can, and I just really give it a rip, it's not going to go all that far. The ball is going to mostly go up onto the green and be roughly the same distance as if I swung a little bit slower. If I took 5 or 6 miles an hour off of that, it's still going to end up about the same spot. With the bunker there and with all that sand there, now I have forgiveness. If I'm hitting on the ground, I can't just slam the club down in the ground. It'll bounce up and I might scull the golf ball, hit it again, bladed across the green. If I got grass, or if I got sand there, I can go ahead and thump this club into the sand as hard as I want to, and it's roughly going to come out the same. So if I have the face wide open and I'm making a really aggressive swing, then it's always going to blast the ball out of the sand, get it up on the green, be very, very consistent. Finally, swing speed is a huge issue out of the bunkers. I took my $18,000 GC Quad device, and it actually measures how fast the club head's moving, how it's moving. I put it into a bunker. This has been almost a year ago when I did a lot of testing with this, and I measured my swing speed for a variety of shots. What I found is if I had a 30-foot bunker shot, so not all that far, kind of a normal distance, 30 feet from me to the pin, I needed to swing almost 70 miles an hour to hit that ball correctly, to really explode the ball out of there. Now for most players, that's just a full swing. So if you have your sand wedge or lob wedge and you're in the bunker, you need to be thinking, I am going to make an absolutely full, hard as I can swing, blast the ball out of there. That's going to be really consistent. Again, if I go slow, if I make a little half swing and I just try to chip it out of there, as he was asking before, what ends up happening is I get incredibly inconsistent, because if I catch a little tiny bit of sand behind the ball, my club isn't moving fast enough to blast on through there. I dig into the ground, I leave it in the bunker. If I'm going a little tiny bit too fast and I catch all ball, then again, I'm gonna hit it, I'm gonna blade it over the green. So the speed is key. If I can swing hard enough, I don't have to be very accurate. I throw that face wide open, I swing as hard as I can, I thump the sand behind the golf ball, and it comes out every single time. So I think that's a great question. It is very counterintuitive. I've thought of that for a long time myself. It's like, why are we messing around with all this? The flop shot technique is very similar to that. I'm making not quite as hard of a swing, but the technique is the same. Unfortunately, with a flop shot, it's not as consistent because I don't have the forgiveness of the sand. I can't throw the club in behind the golf ball anywhere, and I can't swing hard enough to get the consistency there because it'll just go too far where there's no sand to soften the blow. All right, so Michael Taylor 2 says, what exactly is the release? Is it the release of lag, or is it the wrist rotation at impact, or a combination of two? So this is actually what I would consider to be one of my specialties. I think this is one of those things that is widely misunderstood. And let me go over some really key information that I found out over the years. So first of all, when would I say is the club fully released? And you're gonna hear all kinds of different explanations from this. You're gonna hear people say a lot of different things. Some people, and I would say most people, think of the club release as releasing at the golf ball. But if you really dive into it, it doesn't quite make sense, because if I'm hitting an iron especially, I don't want to have this club fully released at impact. If you look at all great players, what they're doing is they're having some forward shaft lean, so the hands are in front of this golf ball, the club shaft is tipped in front of the golf ball, and I'm not really releasing this fully at contact. If you look at a driver, because the ball's farther up in your stance, we want to launch it higher, then I'm not all the way released at contact, but I'm getting closer. My club shaft is almost vertical there. So if I'm releasing at contact, why do we see so many good players that haven't really released the club? It's still got forward shaft lean. Well, I like to look at when the release is, and this is actually much more consistent throughout the bag, is when the club very first splits the forearms. So let's start out with the driver here. When I'm swinging a driver, and I measured roughly 50 major winners on the PGA Tour, slow motion footage, every single one of them released in front of the golf ball. Let me show you what I mean by this. So if I was to choke up on this club and look at when does this club shaft split my forearms. So if I'm lagging behind like this, that would be prior to the release. That would be this club head lagging behind. That would be kind of your forward shaft lean. The club shaft is in front of my forearms. If I'm flipped past like this, and now the club shaft is on the other side of my forearms, so going from lagging to flipping or past that, then that would be after the release. I consider the release to be when the club splits the forearms. And what I found with this is when I measured the best players in the world, they're very consistently getting that club to split the forearms in front of the golf ball. So if you look at the PGA Tour guys, the best players, again, these are major winners, most all of them were releasing that club between 20 degrees in front of this golf ball. So the club very first split the forearms between 20 degrees and 50 degrees in front. The average there is 45 degrees in front, meaning that whenever that club splits the forearms, I've let all that go and I'm about 45 degrees in front. That also happens to be about where my belt buckle, my chest, and my arms are all 45 degrees in front. So everything is in a straight line at that 45 degree in front angle. That makes it so simple to hit the ball consistently because the ball's just getting in the way. That's why I call it the straight line release, is that my hips, my arms, my shoulders, my club, everything is releasing out in front. If you look at a wedge or any club in the bag, you're gonna see it's very consistent with this. It can release slightly earlier with say a sand wedge than with a driver, but it is very, very slightly. If you look at players, it's almost the same throughout the bag. So if I'm hitting a sand wedge here again, then I'm gonna go ahead and have this forward shaft lean, my hands are leading in front, but I'm still releasing out in front of this golf ball. My club is very first splitting my forearms out in front. So instead of worrying about how much forward shaft lean you should have, how long the club is, all this other stuff, all you really need to think about is a position out in front of this golf ball, and I need to release to that position. Now let's dive into it a little bit more. What exactly, that other part of that question is, what is the forearms, what are the wrists doing? So I talked about that's when the club is splitting the forearms. There's actually 3 actions that are happening here, and you don't need to know any of this. All you can really have to know is it's releasing out in front. But sometimes it's good to dig a little bit deeper and really understand it. That way you don't have to ask that question anymore, and you kind of feel confident in what you're doing with your release. So the first motion would be what's called radial and ulnar deviation of the wrist. So if my wrist is flat, if I take my thumb and I bend it back like this, that would be radial deviation. If I turn my hand down like that, that would be ulnar deviation. So when we're in lag, so maximum lag position, like we talk about in the topspeed golf system, is about halfway in the downswing when this left arm's parallel with the ground. That would be maximum radial deviation, maximum wrist up like this. When I fully release this lag, this is where it gets really cool because it all starts to tie in together now. When I fully release this lag would be my straight line release position. If I look at my hands and arms here, my hand is in maximum ulnar deviation. So this motion, or what most people would call a cast, would be exactly what you're trying to do in the golf swing. Get as much lag as you can, as much radial deviation, and then let that thing go. Let that release as hard as you can. So if you watch as I make a swing here, you're gonna see that I can kind of save up some of this lag, and then I'm not holding it off like this. I'm letting it go as hard as I can. That's what gets the speed. If I'm taking this club and throwing it, that's gonna be a lot more speed than if I take this club and try to hold it off like that. It's that whip that allows you to get the swing speed. So let's go ahead and give one a whirl here. See if I can get some good lag, and then I'm gonna release it hard out in front of this golf ball. There we go, hit a nice one right down the middle. And I really tried on that one just to let that go. That's piece number 1. Piece number 2 is what's called flexion, which would be the palm of my hand back toward my body. That's this motion. And extension, my knuckles back toward my elbow. Look like that. Same thing here. When I'm in, specifically, my watch is trying to talk to me. So specifically, this ties in with the right hand. When I'm in the downswing, and again, the same thing with the right hand. When I'm in the downswing with lag, I'm at kind of radial deviation, bent up. And when I'm releasing it, I'm at ulnar deviation, or bent down. The second piece there, my extension. As I'm in that maximum lag position, my wrist is fully cocked back. I have as much extension as I can get there. That's loading up that club and getting it ready to release. When I'm in the straight line release and I've let that go, now my wrist is flat. So I've taken that wrist angle and I've let it go. You have to let that swing go. That's how you get the lag. That's how you get forward shaft lean. That's how you get everything in front, is how hard you let it go in front of the golf ball toward the straight line release. That's the right hand. The left hand is a little bit different. It's gonna go from a slightly bowed position, flat to slightly bowed, and it's not gonna flip a ton this way. It's not gonna get a lot of this wrist extension back like that until after the straight line release.
I'm not sure I understand.
So, sorry, I keep hitting the button on my watch. I'll move that up here a little bit. So as your wrist goes flat, it releases. It's pretty flat here too. And then as I go past that, my left wrist is gonna fold up and then I'm gonna be in extension there. So you're not trying to hold this wrist off. I'm not trying to do this motion. I'm going ahead and letting that go. And at this point in the swing, my wrist is gonna be fully hinged back, what's called extension. And finally there, the last piece is what's called supination and pronation. So if I have my right hand and I rotate it to the right, imagine I'm grabbing a door handle and I turn it to the right. That would be supination, turning this way, palm up toward the sky. The other way would be pronation, so I'd be turning a doorknob to the left. Same thing's happening in the golf swing. As I come in the downswing, my club shaft is flatter. The only way I can do that is to supinate the hand, the right forearm. And those are your radius and ulna and your wrist rolling over top of each other. Those two bones are flipping over. It's not actually coming from the wrist, it's coming from the forearm. If you grab your forearm, you can feel those two rolling over each other. But if I let that supinate in the downswing, as I'm coming through contact and again into the straight line release, now I'm letting that roll on over. I'm letting that pronate. So you can imagine that speed I can get from letting the wrist release like that. So I'm going from kind of a palm up, or feeling like my palm is up. It's not exactly that much up. It's more like this, but it's a feeling a little bit up, to when I release it, now I'm kind of shaking hands with somebody 45 degrees in front of me. I'm letting that hand go. Again, with all three of these, whether I'm talking about radial and ulnar deviation, wrist extension and wrist flexion, or pronation and supination, I'm letting all those go. That's the biggest mistake that I see. Let me go ahead and try one more here, and you're gonna notice when I make this swing, there's no holding on action. You'll see that I have tons of lag, and I wouldn't be flipping or scooping or pushing, but I am letting it all go. I'm not trying to hold anything. So if I focus on that point out in front, I'm gonna let all these wrist positions go, and I'm gonna see how hard I can hit one here. There we go, another solid one right down the right center of the fairway. So the key there is don't try to guide it, don't try to hold on to it. I'm trying to release it as hard as I can. If you don't want to worry about all those wrist angles and positions, I know that gets complicated, just think about the point out in front that you're releasing the club. A lot of that is going to take care of itself. All right, so it's great to talk about all this stuff, but we need to get this in our swing. We need to get this straight line release. Well, I'm going to play one of the best videos, a preview of it, teaching you how to do the straight line release. All you need to do is click the card that pops up on your screen or the link down below in the description, and you can go through this, follow this step by step, start getting that straight line release and build that consistency in your own swing. Best of luck, let's go ahead and get started. A common misconception I see is that we want to create lag and we just want to hold that lag all the way on through contact and get as much lag as we can coming through contact, and that's simply not true. In the release section, we're going to talk about how to turn that lag into energy, how to turn that into speed so that you can hit it very far and do it, like we mentioned, without hardly any effort at all. And as we're coming through contact, we're going to fully release this angle as we're about 45 past contact. So if I draw, a 45-degree angle, I should be looking at both arms, nice and straight, the club splitting those arms, so that by releasing the club, by getting this angle to release as we're coming through contact, that's what's going to create the speed. Our hands are moving a very short distance, our club is moving a very long distance through contact, and it creates that whip-like effect. Very different swings hitting the exact same position. So first let's take a look at Dustin Johnson releasing the club 45 past. And the reason we're going to see such similar or such different swings producing similar positions is that this is the real physics of how this has to happen. Here we're looking at Sergio Garcia. Again, we're going to see tons of